freedom of religion is what this country is all about. And the fact that George Washington was here and presenting back to the synagogue this letter which clearly distinguished the Americas from any other place in the world. It should be part of the national conscience, not just of a small group.
I think it's very important to understand that this country is founded on so many religions, and that everyone has the right to believe in their own religion and carry it on to their children.
The first thing that a visitor walks in, he sees right in front of him a short video, it's only 2.5 minutes, that tells the entire story of what you're going to see here. The exhibits on the first floor and on the second floor, and then you have a wonderful view of the synagogue. This is the most important part of the visitor center. This is the amazing story of religious liberty, which happened first in our country and first in Rhode Island. It's not Virginia, it's Rhode Island where it all began. It began with two extraordinary men, Roger Williams and John Clark. And they had been ministers in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and they had actually been forced out because they were considered too liberal. And they put together an incredible charter, which after years they got the King of England, King Charles II, to sign. The King's idea, he called it the lively experiment. He was very worried about it because here was a state or colony being formed separating the church from the state, which was a revolutionary idea. Even today in England, the church and the state are one. And he finally agreed to sign it because it was so far away. These very liberal and revolutionary ideas wouldn't infect his kingdom. And on both sides, we have screens that will tell you the whole story of not only religious freedom and liberty, but particularly the story of the George Washington letter. After the Constitution was signed, all the leaders, including George Washington, wanted a Bill of Rights. Now, a lot of people think it was just Thomas Jefferson, but we have letters that George Washington wrote to all kinds of religious organizations talking about the Bill of Rights. In 1790, he comes to Rhode Island and he is met by the leaders of the community. One of them was a man called Moses Seixas, who was a leader of the Jewish community, who presents him a letter. George Washington answers that letter a few days later, and this is the most beautiful letter one could ever read in the history of religious freedom. And for the first time, it expresses the views of all the founders, and it's the first time the head of state ever has expressed such views as this, where you would have freedom of religion, freedom of press, freedom to think and be what you want. And in due course, in 1791, with all the founding fathers and all the legislatures finally agreeing to this, the Bill of Rights, which is an amendment to the Constitution, was passed.
This is the center of what we call, really, the Religious Freedom Mile. There are a number of early Catholic, Protestant, and Jewish denominations that had their start in America right here within this 2 or 3 block radius. So my sense is the people that are here today are not too different from the people that were here 300 years ago.
Religious freedom is not just something to be taken for granted, but it's something to be appreciated and cultivated and renewed all the time.
Just over 350 years ago, the first Jews arrived in Rhode Island. One of the reasons they came here came to a head in 1663, when Rhode Island was finally organized as the first political entity in the history of the world to totally separate the church from the state. The result is that all kinds of minorities began coming into this new port: Quakers, Catholics, and Jews. We have portraits of many of these families, starting in the 1700s to the end of the Civil War in 1865. And these are portraits by some of America's greatest artists, like Gilbert Stuart. And all these people in the portraitry are related either by marriage or by connections, as we say in the Old South, or by business relationships. Children love it, everybody loves this, and we now have something over 200 of these portraits. We'll in due course have over 400, telling really the story of Jewish America during those periods.
I think anyone that's interested in history in general, whether it be religious or secular, I think would take something from this and learn. It's a great history lesson. It could really be an important piece leading into the teaching of the Constitution, Bill of Rights.
Ezra Stiles, who ended up president of Yale University, was deeply interested in Jews, in Hebrew, and he kept an incredible diary, not only of the Jewish community here, but of the Christian community. And based on his diaries, we have created a series of vignettes where you can, like a little movie, see what was going on, both among Christians and Jews and blacks. This is really, again, giving us a slice of life of Newport in the middle of the 1700s.
Probably not, but let us try to find one.
I had some ideas for the paper.
It's all history, but it's something that's so relevant to today, given that our country is very diverse. You get that sense here at the Visitor Center that diversity is okay. And as a world, we are diverse, and we need places like this that perpetuate that acceptance.
Both letters, the letter from Moses Seixas to Washington and Washington's response, just are full of wonderful things to study and look at. And if we can bring that message around to the country and hopefully to the rest of the world ultimately, that would be just absolutely tremendous.
George Washington Institute for Religious Freedom, which is the entity that is really running this project, is going to develop and has developed educational programs, and John is passionate about that, and he's bringing that concept throughout the country and hopefully throughout the world.